Welcome to the Middleware Tech YouTube channel. Today, we're starting a complete course on Hibernate. In this series, you'll learn web application architecture. Let's get started.
Okay, so we talked about web application architecture. Okay, so as we know that in Java JT domain we have we're following 3T architecture. One is a client, then you are talking about middle tier, then you talk about EIS tier, right? So if I'm using some .jsp or .jspx in the user interface or .xml, we can create user interface in case of Oracle application framework. Or you can use .html to create some of the advanced framework like AngularJS, right? React.js or EXT.js, some of the advanced framework based on JavaScript. So client here is that tier with which client is interacting with. I'm interacting with an Yahoo page or Gmail page, login page. So that is a client tier for me. Okay. Now in the middle tier contains some server, right? So in the middle tier, we have generally two types of server. One is called web server. Another is called application server. Two types of server is there, right? For examples of web server, like you can say that Apache, one type of web server, then Oracle HTTP server, Oracle HTTP server, right? HTTP server, Tomcat, these are part of web server, right? Whereas examples of application server, like you can use JBoss, right? Then we can use WebSphere, JBoss from Red Hat, WebSphere from IBM, or Oracle WebLogic, right? Okay. So these are the web server that we used in our advanced Java, and these are the application server that we used, right? So this web server is used to execute some web component, right? Like servlet, JSP, bin, right? Whereas your advanced Java, we use some of the application component. In advanced Java, we use some of the application component like EJB, Enterprise Java Bin, ADF-BC, Application Development Framework Business Component, Spring BC, Business Component, or you can write BC 4J, Business Component for Java. These are some of the application component that we used, right? Okay. Now we are using application component or web component, whatever it is. The purpose is that I'm going to get some business logic, the web tier, right? And we are writing some business logic in the application tier, business logic, right? Okay. Now I'm using this web component to write some business logic, as well as I'm using some application component also to write some business logic. And the question is that what is the difference between two types of component, web component and application component? How we can differentiate, right? Because both the component I'm using to write business logic. So we want to say that we have generated, we talked about two types of web application. Simple web application. Another is called enterprise level application. Enterprise level. We use generally two types of web application, right? Talk about simple web application. Now when we talked about simple web application, say that we have a small organization and just to expose the functionality, like you want to expose the functionality of a particular clinic, or you want to expose the functionality for a shopping mall, or you want to expose some functionality for a particular incoming workshop. So I can use a simple web server, writing some JSP or HTML page, just to expose the functionality with the help of JavaScript to the user, where we have less database interaction, and it generally running in a single host. Single host means single server. And you can create a simple web application with the help of this web component server.js even. You can create. Right? Okay. Now I'm talking about enterprise level application. In case of enterprise level application, enterprise level applications are those applications that is running worldwide. As for example, different vendor like IBM, Oracle, HP, Apple, and Honda, Vodafone, right? Consumer electronics, LG Electronics, Samsung. So different vendor, they are handling their operations throughout the world in 200 countries, right? So they have to handle or take care of the policies in all the countries, rules and regulation, currency, language, right? Separately, right? So the application, for those applications, we use multiple server or multiple host, different server for different requirement. So for that type of applications, we identify as an enterprise level application. And if I want to write a business logic to implement an enterprise level application, we use these application component in Java G2 environment. We use these application component. EJB is an open source. ADF-BC is used for ADF framework. It's an Oracle application component. Spring BC, once again, it's an open source. Whereas BC4J, business component for Java, is used for Oracle application framework. It's an Oracle application component. So these are the application component. We use this application component to implement business logic, right? For enterprise level application. Okay. Okay. So this is how two types of web application, two type of application we can create in Java J2 environment, right? Now this is just simple discussion. Fine. Now what is the technicalities? If you go to some more technicalities, I want to mean that what are the technicalities, how we can differentiate between simple web application and enterprise level application. Some technicalities is there. Technicalities in the sense like transaction, web service support, clustering, load balancing. These are some of the technicalities. I've written some of the points. It must be there for an enterprise level application. Security with JAS. So these are some of the technicalities. It must be there for an enterprise level application that is running in multiple hosts or different countries, right? I'm not going to the meaning of all the main terms. I'm coming one by one, right? So this is how we can distinguish between simple web application and enterprise level application, and these are some of the technicalities that is supported by enterprise level application, right? And this is how we can different web components and application components. These are called application component that is used to implement enterprise level application, and these are called web components that we can use to implement some basic application, right? Okay. So this is the difference between web component, application component, web application, and enterprise level application, right? Okay. So this is the things that I should discuss first before moving next. That is simple web application architecture, right? Okay. Now let's come to this Hibernate. Now, before saying anything about Hibernate, let's talk about introduction to Hibernate before that. So the same concept just now we talked to you. Okay. Now we talked about a simple web application, enterprise level application. Now let's talk about some flow, how generally we execute an enterprise level application for a particular use case called login, right? So assume you have a particular use case. My use case name is login. Okay, I'm not going to technicalities based on the UML specification. Just initially, I'm going as an layman's language. I'm talking. Then I'm coming to the technicalities step by step. So I'm talking about the flow of a particular use case login. How generally we implement a flow, right? So generally we use in the view layer. We use here login.jsp, right, in the view layer. Now view layer is interacting with the controller layer. So in the controller layer, we use some Java class as a controller. Assume login controller.java. So view layer is that layer with which client is interacting. And controller layer is responsible to handle client request and response. Generally don't write any business logic in the controller layer, right? So it will take the request from the user and send the response to the customer. Now from controller layer, the request will come to the next we talked about is a model layer. Model layer we divide based on the application into two different layers. One is called service layer, and then service layer is talking to DAO layer, data access object layer. And we defined as a model layer, right? Okay. Now, if you are implementing a service layer, generally you use interface implementation. So assume your service layer name is login. Not following any specification, just to show the flow. I'm just writing like this. Now this model layer also I can write a simple Java class like user.DAO.java and its implementation class. And this DAO layer is responsible to interacting with the database tier or EIS tier. Right. Last time we forget to say that we have another tier in the application architecture that is called EIS tier. EIS tier full name is Enterprise Information System. So it's a logical name. So it's pointing to some data source. So that data source may be a database, or that data source may be and packaged application ERP. That data source may be an CRM application, or it can be a GMS API possible, right? So from where some data will come, that is said to be the data source, right? Okay. So we're talking about here that flow, how a flow generally work. Login.jsp interacting with the controller interacting with the service layer, login service.java, interface and implementation class, user.DAO.java, and the database. Like, okay. DAO layer contain all the logic related to CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. So this DAO layer is responsible to interact with the database, and in the DAO layer we'll write all the logic related to database interaction. Right? Okay. Whereas service layer, we use some of the logic related to authentication, authorization, logger, email service, JMS service to interact, expose the any business logic as a web service. This type of external application, external tasks generally implement in the service layer, right? Again, I'm saying some authentication, authorization, logger, exposing a particular business logic as a web service, or JMS service, email service. This type of external service we generally implement in the service layer. But this DAO layer will always implement some CRUD operation to interact with the database, right? Okay. So where is Hibernate? This is the normal flow for a simple J2E application. Hibernate is here in the DAO layer. We use Hibernate between DAO layer and the database. Hibernate is here. We're talking about Hibernate. Our topic is Hibernate, right? So Hibernate is between DAO layer and the database layer. So always, can I use Hibernate in the service layer? No, we generally use Hibernate in the DAO layer. Hibernate is used to interact with database from Java, right? So it will come in the DAO layer where you have the database interaction from Java, right? Okay.